Alright, so I'm going to load up just a file here that I've already had in place for the beach house. At the moment it just shows this kind of photorealistic display here as if I was about to do some rendering. But to go back to work on materials, as I mentioned, we don't really want to be working with the scene lights. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch from realistic just to shaded. And then I'm going to get out of this perspective representation here, and then just go back to an orthogonal. And I'm just going to do that by pressing the letter U. And I'll go to a top view. And it brings me back to this look here. Now, I described a method where you could select the walls and then isolate them. Another thing you can do is just to put them on their own layer. 3D Studio Max does have layers, but I think what I'll do here is, again, I'll just isolate them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the wall on the left side here, and it automatically, of course, selects the wall on the other side. And then I'm just going to right-click and use Isolate Selection. I'm going to hit F4 so I can see the edges on these walls. And I'm also going to turn off the background setting. Notice how it's trying to represent the sky color here. So I'm going to hit Alt and B and just go back to the regular solid color background, which happens to be this gray color. Alright, so before I start working on these materials, I'm going to want to see what I already have. And to do that, I can just click on this portion of the work plane here, Shaded and Edges, and then I'll drop down to Materials and select Shaded Materials with Maps. And then I'll see the stone kind of masonry materials that are already on this wall. Now, what I want to do here is I want to first apply an Edit Poly modifier. And all that does is it just allows me to get at the sort of components that were used to build this, or the sub-object level as they're called. And that's going to allow me to select individual faces, or I could select points or lines as well. So that, again, is on the Modify tab. And then I expand the modifier list and drop down to Edit Poly. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand that, and then that will allow me again to just pick individual faces. So my objective here is to apply a different material to the inside faces, and then I'll apply different materials to the outside faces as well. So for the moment, I'm just going to rotate into a view where I can see that outside face, and then I'll just hold down my Alt button and my middle mouse and rotate around. Hold down Control to select another face, another polygon. Now you can see that I've got those two outside polygons selected. I'm going to drag them over to the right here, and then I'm going to, oh, we hit this problem yesterday. I want to hit M first, sorry, so I can bring up my material editor here. I've got very limited resolution on screen, so I'm going to just pull that to the side. And when that's up, now I'll select the polygons. And then I'll just drag those to the side. Now, I could apply a material to that face. And that's kind of what I was describing yesterday. But a better method is to actually set up what's called a multi-subobject material in 3D Studio Max. And you can see that right here. So under the Material Map Browser, under that first section called Standard, we want to use this one right here, which is just called the multi-subobject. So I'll double-click on that. I'll see it pop into my view here so I can start working on it. Now what this is it's one material that contains several others. And I'm going to apply it to the object, the walls. And then what I'll be able to do is I'll be able to specify which materials apply to which faces of the wall and do it somewhat numerically. Okay, so back in here, I'm going to initially just go back to the object level, and I do that by clicking on Edit Poly. Okay, and then I can select them again. They get highlighted with those white edge lines, so I know they're highlighted. And then for now, what I'm going to simply do is just apply this multi-sub-object material to the entire set of objects there. And all I have to do to apply the material is just click on this little checker, sphere, and green box here, and it's called Assign Material to Selection. So I'll click there, and you'll notice now they all turn black to match what I've got right here. Alright, so I'm just going to expand my material editor here, just to kind of focus on this for a moment. If I double click here in the properties, you see that what I've got is a list of 10 different slots here for this multi-subobject material. So what that would allow me to do is I could specify 10 different materials that would apply to this broader material setting. I don't need that many. I'm only going to actually have 3. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Set Number, and then I'm just going to drop that down to 3. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to where I can see my object here in my work plane. And this is where I'm going to access the sub-object levels here, like for example polygon. And I'll select this outside face. And with that selected, now what I want to do is I want to drop down here in my command panel. And remember, I've got this tiny little scroll bar over on the right, or I can just kind of drag to an empty space until I see the panning hand. And then what I want to do is I want to drop right down to the bottom. And there's this section right here called Polygon Material IDs. Now, what I can do here is I can set an ID number. Notice how it says 1 there by default. What that corresponds to are the numbers that are listed here in this column that says ID. So if I set this polygon to be ID number 2, then it's going to take on whatever properties I drag into this ID number 2 in the material settings. So I'm going to keep that particular polygon as number 2, and then I'm just going to rotate around and select this polygon, and I'm going to set it to be number 2 as well. Okay, so I've got both those selected. They won't look any different at the moment because everything is just kind of set to be this generic black at the moment. But now what I can do is I can open my material editor and I can populate each of these 3 slots with a specific material. So to do that, I'm just going to use those Autodesk library materials that we were looking at yesterday. We've got this huge list here in the material map browser. I'm going to expand Autodesk Material Library, and I think I'll use siding for the outside walls of this beach house. So I'll just expand siding, and you can see I've got all sorts of options there. And I'll try just this, let's see here. I'll try the board and batten one. I'll double click. Okay, that brings it into my main view here. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag the node on that new material into slot number 2 right there. Okay, so I just connect node to node there. And you'll see that now in the properties I've got that material shown for slot number 2. And as you would expect, now I can see that those 2 polygons now have that new material in them. They don't show the map at the moment. And to do that, I just want to go back in here and double click on the new material, which is not the multi-subobject, but this material right here. I'll make it current, and then I'll just turn on this little button here, which is the checkerboard with the light bulb. It says show the map in view. And then now I can see that map has updated on just that one face. And if I rotate around, I'll see it on this face as well. Now, if the mapping or the size or the scale or the rotation is off, I can just open up my material editor here again, and all the edits for this material will be accessible right where the map is. So if I want to change the size of the map, I come over to the far left here in this set of 3, and I'll double click where the map is listed right here. And this is what we saw yesterday, where we've got access to scale, and we've got position, and we can also rotate this as well. So as I begin to move these sliders now, you'll see that in my window, that material, that map is going to update. Okay, so I have the ability to put that in just the right spot, get it to be the right size. Okay, and I maintain that control. It remains parametric, so I can edit it as I go. Okay, so I'll just quickly finish up by adding a couple other materials. If I want to put a different surface on this end, then I would make sure I've got polygon selected. I'll click here first. And then in its properties, I'll drag down to the bottom of this command panel window here. And I'll set this to be ID 3. And I'll do the same thing for this one. Okay, and then I'll do the inside ones as well. These ones are actually already set to 1, so I just want to confirm that. I'll leave them as they are. And then in my material editor, I'll just finish off by applying another material to number 1. To access the properties for the multi-subobject material, remember, just click on its title right here. You can see that number 1 and 3 are empty, so I'm just going to populate number 1 with an appropriate interior wall material, which might be, let's see what we got here. We'll put some wood panels in there. So I'll do a mahogany. There we go. And I'll just drag again from that little node, that little dot on the right side. And I'm just going to drag it right into that box. That was a different method. I could have also, just as I did the first time, I can also just drag from that node into that node. It would have done the same thing. And now you can see here in the viewport that that black surface has changed. At the moment it doesn't show the map. If I want to see the map, then I'll just click here. It might be a fairly generic one. I might want to choose something a little bit more. There we go. Now I can see it. Yeah, I don't have very distinct materials here. My inside and my outside wall happen to be pretty similar. So there is a difference, even though they look, you can see there that there is a difference in that material, very subtle. But so that's how I go about setting materials up for different faces.